My name's Gigi, and this story is going to sound insane, almost like something out of a movie, but I promise you, it happened. And it all started with a dinner I'll never forget. It was supposed to be a family night out. One of those evenings where everyone gets together, eats, laughs, and pretends for a couple of hours that we actually like each other. Except in my family, those dinners were never about love or togetherness. They were about comparison, humiliation, and my parents finding creative new ways to remind me that I was, in their words, the failure child. That night, the restaurant was buzzing. Candlelight flickered on the tables, waiters rushed past, carrying trays of sizzling food, and couples toasted to anniversaries. And there I was, sitting across from my parents and my older brother, pretending not to feel like the biggest joke in the room. I just lost my part-time job. Rent was due in 2 weeks. And the small business idea I'd been clinging to, the dream that had kept me awake every night brainstorming, had just fallen apart because I didn't have the money to keep it going. I was raw, fragile, trying to keep my chin up. And that's when my dad raised his glass. "To success," he said, smiling at my brother, Daniel. "The real success of this family." Everyone clinked glasses, except me. I stared down at my water. I thought maybe they'd just leave it at that. But no. My mom chuckled and tilted her head toward me. "And as for Gigi," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut, "she'll never succeed, not with those wild ideas and silly dreams." Then my dad laughed, full-on, belly-shaking laughter. My brother smirked, and suddenly the whole table felt like it was caving in on me. I wanted to disappear. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. My palms were sweaty against the tablecloth. I was 24 years old, and in that moment, I felt like a child being scolded in public. I forced myself to smile, but inside, something broke. That mocking toast, those 4 words, "She'll never succeed," they seared themselves into my memory like a brand. I didn't know it at the time, but that night would change everything. Because one day, years later, I'd make them eat those words. Literally. But first, you need to understand what came next. After that dinner, after the mocking toast, I didn't cry in front of them. I smiled. I paid for my half of the bill, even though my bank account was gasping for air, and I walked out like their words hadn't just ripped through me. But inside, something cracked. That night, in my tiny apartment with its peeling paint and a fridge that hummed louder than my thoughts, I stared at the ceiling and replayed every laugh, every smirk. My mom's smug tilt of her head, my dad's cruel chuckle, my brother's little smirk, like he was enjoying a private show at my expense. "She'll never succeed," it echoed, over and over. The next morning, the universe decided to pile on. My manager at the thrift store handed me a pink slip. "Sorry, Gigi. We're cutting hours. You're the newest hire." Just like that, gone. Rent looming, bills stacked on my counter, and no backup plan. I walked home in the rain, clutching the cardboard box of my things. Each step felt like confirmation. Maybe they were right. Maybe I would never succeed. But here's the thing about being mocked, about being humiliated. If you sit with that pain long enough, it doesn't just hurt, it hardens. It starts whispering, "Prove them wrong." I scribbled in a journal that night. Ideas, business names, anything. My handwriting was frantic, slanted, half legible. I wasn't just writing dreams. I was carving battle plans. I didn't know how yet. But one day, I'd shove their words back down their throats. Then came the betrayal that pushed me over the edge. One afternoon, I overheard my brother Daniel talking to my parents in the kitchen. I wasn't supposed to be home. He didn't know I was standing in the hallway, frozen. "She's wasting her time," Daniel scoffed. "Honestly, it's pathetic. If she had any sense, she'd let me take over her little business ideas. I could actually make them profitable." And my mom, she agreed. "Maybe you should," she said. "Gigi's not cut out for this. She's too fragile." Fragile. The word hit harder than any punch. I wanted to storm in, to scream, to throw every cruel word back at them. But I didn't. I stood there, my nails digging into my palms, blood welling up in tiny half-moon crescents. And in that silence, I made myself a promise. They would regret underestimating me. I didn't know how yet, but I could feel it. The plan, the revenge. It was forming, and it all started with a stranger I met by accident. It was a rainy Tuesday, the kind of day where the sky feels heavy enough to crush you. I ducked into a tiny coffee shop just to get dry, shivering in my thrift store jacket, wondering how much longer I could keep pretending I had things under control. I ordered the cheapest drink on the menu and sank into a corner, pulling out my beat-up journal, the one full of scribbles, half-baked business ideas, and desperate notes to myself. Like, don't give up yet. I didn't even realize someone was watching me until I heard a voice. You write like someone who's planning an escape, she said. I looked up. A woman stood there, maybe in her 30s, sharp eyes, rain dripping from her umbrella. She smiled faintly, like she could see right through me. Her name was Maya. I laughed awkwardly. An escape more like a disaster plan. Maya sat down across from me, uninvited but not unwelcome. Sometimes those are the same thing. What are you escaping from? And just like that, it all poured out. The mocking toast, the job loss, the failed attempts to start something of my own, the way my family treated me like I was a joke, a burden, a permanent disappointment. Maya didn't interrupt. She didn't give me the pity smile people usually do when they hear you're struggling. She listened, really listened. And when I finally ran out of words, she leaned forward and said, "Then make them choke on their laughter." That line, it hit me like lightning. She told me she worked with small businesses, helping people turn bad ideas into real ones. And then she did something no one in my life had ever done. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're not crazy. You're not fragile. You just need someone to believe in you until you believe in yourself." I don't know why, but I trusted her. Maybe it was the way she spoke, like she'd been where I was. Maybe it was just the first time in years someone saw me as more than a failure. The very next day, I showed up at her co-working space. It wasn't fancy, just mismatched chairs, whiteboards full of scribbles, and people hunched over laptops with caffeine running through their veins. But to me, it felt like possibility. Maya took me under her wing. She taught me how to test ideas without wasting money, how to talk to customers, how to stop treating my dreams like hobbies. Under her guidance, I built something small but real, recycled material phone cases, my first product. Ugly at first, but then better. I sold a few, then a few more. Then I started getting messages like, "This is brilliant, and where can I get another?" For the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving, I was building. But success, even small success, attracts the wrong kind of attention. Because when my family found out, instead of being proud, my brother Daniel decided he wanted a piece of it. No, he decided he wanted all of it. And that's when the betrayal hit harder than anything I'd faced before. Word travels fast in my family. Too fast. The second my mom found out I was actually making sales, she couldn't wait to brag. Not about me, of course, but about how maybe Gigi was finally getting her act together. She said it with that smug tone that made it sound more like an insult than a compliment. And that's how Daniel found out. At first, he pretended to be supportive. He pulled me aside at a family dinner, put on his fake big brother smile, and said, "Hey, I heard about your little business. That's cute. You know, if you want, I could invest. I've got connections. I could make this thing huge." There it was, that word again. Cute. Like I was a child playing dress up while he was the real businessman. I told him no. Politely, but firmly. I didn't want his money. I didn't want his strings. For the first time in my life, I was standing on my own 2 feet, and I wasn't about to let him take the steering wheel. He shrugged, smirked, and said, "Suit yourself. Don't come crying to me when it all falls apart." I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. 2 weeks later, I stumbled across the proof. My mom had left her iPad on the kitchen counter, logged into her messages. I wasn't snooping, at least, not intentionally. But one notification popped up, and my blood ran cold. It was from Daniel to one of his business buddies. "Check this out. My sister's been making these phone cases. Honestly, the idea's solid. I can get you in on it, but we'll slap a new name on it and scale it fast. She's not cut out for the real work anyway." My hands were shaking as I read it. My own brother was pitching my idea. My sweat, my midnight hours, my first fragile attempt at building something to his rich buddy as if it were his. He wasn't offering to help me, he was trying to steal it. I confronted him that night. My voice trembled, but I got the words out. You tried to sell my idea behind my back. Why? Daniel didn't even flinch. He leaned back in his chair, smirked, and said, "Because you're not capable of running it, I am. You should be thanking me. If this thing takes off, at least the family name will be attached to someone who won't embarrass us." I swear, in that moment I saw red. My palms burned. My jaw locked so tight I thought my teeth might crack. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just walked away. And as I walked, one thought pounded louder than my heartbeat. They don't respect me because they've never had to. That was the night I stopped being desperate for their approval. That was the night I started planning real revenge. Because I wasn't just going to prove them wrong. I was going to make them kneel. And the perfect opportunity was about to fall right into my lap. The restaurant listing felt like a dare. I was up late, the kind of late where the whole city seems paused and your head is loud enough to taste. I was scrolling through one of those neighborhood groups, half gossip, half classifieds, when a post caught my eye. Well-loved family restaurant for sale. Owner retiring. Loyal clientele. Motivated seller. The price was tempting. Not astronomical. Not realistic for someone with my bank balance. But the numbers underneath the listing, steady monthly sales, low rent, room for growth, made my chest tighten in a different way than panic. It was the kind of tight that tastes like possibility. I printed the ad on paper that I could afford. Yes, I still used paper in 2025, and I taped it to the wall above my small desk. I stared at it until the edges blurred. The mocking toast flashed in my mind. She'll never succeed. I sat on the floor and let the anger crawl up my thighs like a warm animal. It was still there, the bruise of humiliation, but now it came with a new accessory, a plan. Except plans need money, and I did not have money. What I had were receipts, a growing customer list, and a stubborn will. I also had Maya, who by now had become less of a mentor and more of a co-conspirator. When I told her about the listing, she didn't sigh or say, "You can't possibly." He leaned forward, eyes bright. "Buy it," she said. "Buy it," I echoed. A laugh escaped me, thin and brittle. "Maya, I sell phone cases on weekends. I don't own a business that has actual doors." "Then use those doors," she said. "Look, this isn't just a restaurant. It's prime real estate for community. You already have a micro brand. You have customers. You have a story. And you have something else. They underestimate you. That's leverage." Leverage. I liked the word. It felt like something heavy I could lift if only I found the fulcrum. We started doing what entrepreneurs do when they're trying to have a miracle. Due diligence. I called the owner, Mr. Alvarez, an old man with a habit of laughing at his own jokes. He showed me the books like he was proud of them. His hands trembled as he handed me the profit and loss statements. The place had been open for decades. Regulars came in and ordered the same things, and the kitchen ran on muscle memory. It was messy, but it was steady. There were problems, of course. The decor was stuck in a different decade. The website was non-existent, and the menu was priced like it was nice. But the foot traffic was real. People loved the place. If you fixed a few operational leaks and added decent marketing, you could turn a reliable, modest income business into something that actually paid dividends. The ask, the price Mr. Alvarez wanted, was still higher than I had, but not by an impossible amount. If I could secure a loan for the down payment and negotiate seller financing for the rest, it might be doable. I started crunching numbers at the kitchen table, sleeves rolled up, spreadsheets like battle maps. Each line felt sacred. I logged projected revenue increases with cautious optimism and multiplied margin improvements like a prayer. Then reality intervened in the form of my brother. When Daniel heard I was looking at buying a restaurant, he laughed the laugh he used for me. Indulgent, condescending, like I'd told a joke that wasn't funny. "A restaurant?" he snorted. "Gigi, do you know how thin profit margins are in hospitality? You'll be lucky if you don't bankrupt yourself in a year. Are you trying to make a scene?" I should have expected it, but the coldness in his tone, less about business, more like the protective hiss of someone who wants to control the story, stung. I told him I wasn't interested in his opinion. He smirked and, in a voice calibrated for family performances, said, "If you really want to do this, I could help. I have contacts. I can get you financing." No, I'd learned what that word help often meant. String. Ownership masked as generosity. I thanked him flatly and declined. Behind my back, though, Daniel started moving. He called people I didn't know. He mentioned casually, to mother and father at separate dinners, that he was looking into investing in local businesses. He made offhand remarks about how family members should always support the family's ventures. It was positioning, soft, invisible, predatory. I pushed faster. I met with a small business lender who looked like he'd seen too many hopeful people and still smiled. He liked the cash flow in the books and the community loyalty, but he wanted collateral. My savings were thin, but my little business, my invoices, my email list, could serve as proof of concept. I offered what I had, which was bravery wrapped in thrift store fabric. Then something else happened, unexpected and huge. One of my first customers, a woman named Tara, who'd bought a case last winter and written me a message about how it made her feel seen, reached out. She worked in small event catering and knew people who organized community pop-up dinners. She loved the idea of a neighborhood-owned restaurant with a new energy. She offered to help get the community behind my bid, to arrange taste tests and fundraisers. That was the start of my down payment. We launched a tiny, scrappy campaign, coffee shop flyers, a GoFund page with honest copy, my awkward video asking for support. I thought we'd get a few $100s and a lot of encouragement. Instead, people donated with notes that read things like, "For the underdog, and she deserves this." It was wild and humbling. The donors weren't billionaires, but a sum that mattered came together, small amounts added into a big, dangerous pile. But even as the momentum built, so did opposition. Daniel's friend, the same guy he'd pitched my cases to, began calling the owner, pretending to help him vet offers. A local developer, who'd been sniffing around old properties, suddenly expressed interest in acquiring the restaurant to flip it into pricey condos. Pressure mounted from all sides. The seller, Mr. Alvarez, grew anxious. He wanted a quick, clean sale that favored a buyer with deep pockets, who could close fast. My heart hammered each time I realized my grassroots pile of hope might not be enough against the kind of money Daniel could court in his sleep. Still, I kept going. I refined my pitch, tightened the budget, and talked to Mr. Alvarez about seller financing, about giving him a comfortable monthly payout instead of the full lump sum. He hesitated, scared at the thought of another stranger owning his life's work. But when I told him about the community behind me, his eyes softened. "I want this place to keep its soul," he said. "I don't want it turned into a glass box." At the end of the week, we had a bid in, not a flashy one, but honest. I held my breath as the owner told me he'd consider it. It felt like standing at the edge of a cliff with a rope made of thread. My palms sweated. My mouth tasted like pennies. Then, the night before Mr. Alvarez was supposed to announce his decision, an anonymous letter slid under his restaurant door. Someone had complained about the risks of seller finance. Someone had reminded him, in careful, patronizing script, that a fast cash buyer would be more reliable. The implication was thinly veiled. "Don't be sentimental. Don't be foolish." My chest dropped. The letter had Daniel's handwriting rhythm, the same long loops he made on the tail of his jeep. I couldn't prove it. I didn't have proof, but the timing stung like a thrown stone. That night I sat on my living room floor, surrounded by receipts and supportive messages from strangers, feeling both triumphant and tiny. The fundraising had gotten us far, but not far enough to drown out the kind of pressure Daniel could generate. I stared at the ceiling and turned my face to the dark. I was so close to something enormous. I could feel it. The restaurant could be mine. I could own the table where once my parents had toasted my failure. I could be the one to hand them a plate and watch them swallow their ridicule. But to get there, I had to play against people who were used to playing dirty. I had to be smarter, faster, and more ruthless, on my own terms. I picked up my phone and typed a message to Maya. "We need to move. Tonight." She replied instantly. "I'm on my way." And that's where the story paused. A breath held before a sprint. The next morning would decide everything. The next morning felt like walking into a courtroom where the verdict could either crown you or kill you. Mr. Alvarez had called both parties, myself and Daniel's investor friend, to the restaurant. He wanted to hear our offers one last time before making his decision. I arrived early, nerves strung like piano wire, clutching my folder of numbers and community pledges. Maya stood beside me like a shield, whispering, "Remember, truth is your sharpest weapon." Daniel arrived late, of course, strolling in with his tailored suit and that smirk he wore like armor. His investor friend, a man who looked like money wrapped in smugness, followed. They didn't bring folders. They didn't need to. Their pitch was power, plain and simple. We sat at one of the corner booths, the same booth where years ago my family had raised glasses and mocked me. I had to steady my hands on the table to stop them from trembling. Mr. Alvarez, weary but dignified, gestured for us to speak. Daniel's friend went first. His words oozed assurance. We can pay cash, no waiting, no risk. We'll renovate, modernize, and maximize profits. This will be good for you, Mr. Alvarez. Quick, clean, professional. He might as well have said, we'll gut the soul of this place, but you'll get your money fast. When it was my turn, I stood, heart pounding so loud I wondered if they could hear it. My offer isn't the biggest, I admitted. It isn't cash up front. But it's backed by something stronger than money. Loyalty. The people who've eaten here for years don't want to see this restaurant turned into another soulless project. They've donated, they've pledged, they've promised to keep coming back because this place matters to them. To us. And I promise to keep its heart alive. I handed him the folder, spreadsheets, letters of support, photos of the fundraisers, screenshots of donation messages. One note from a regular named Mrs. Patel read, "This restaurant has been our family's Sunday tradition for 15 years. Don't let it vanish." For a moment, silence sat heavy. Then Daniel leaned back, smiling like a snake. "Very moving," he drawled. "But let's be realistic, Gigi. Restaurants fail every day. Passion doesn't pay the bills. What happens when she defaults on her loan? What happens when she can't keep up with costs? Mr. Alvarez, do you really want to risk your legacy on sentiment?" The way he said it, she, like I wasn't even in the room, lit a fire in my chest. So I did something reckless. I pulled out my phone, opened the crowdfunding page, and hit refresh. Donations had surged overnight. The total was higher than I expected, much higher, enough to cover a larger down payment than I'd promised. I turned the screen to Mr. Alvarez. "This is what happens when people believe in something real," I said. My voice no longer shook. "They show up. For me, for you, for this place." Mr. Alvarez stared at the numbers, then at me. Slowly, he reached across the table, slid the anonymous warning letter out of his pocket, and pushed it toward me. "This arrived last night," he said. "I don't like intimidation tactics." Daniel's smirk faltered, just for a flicker of a second. But I saw it. Mr. Alvarez folded his hands. "I built this place on hard work, honesty, and community. I'd rather pass it to someone who values that, even if it means waiting longer for my money. My decision is made." I held my breath. He looked at me. "Gigi, the restaurant is yours." The words hit me like thunder and sunlight, all at once. My eyes burned, my body trembling with a mix of victory and disbelief. Daniel's jaw tightened, his mask cracking into something raw and ugly. Maya squeezed my hand under the table. "You did it," she whispered. But in the corner of my mind, I knew this was only the beginning. Owning the restaurant wasn't just a win, it was a weapon. And I already knew exactly how I would use it. Because one day soon, my parents and Daniel would walk through these doors again, and I'd be waiting. Owning the restaurant felt surreal at first. The keys were heavy in my hand, like they carried not just doors and locks, but power. Every morning, I'd walk in and run my fingers over the wooden tables, the same ones where I once sat, broke and humiliated, listening to my parents laugh about how I'd never succeed. Now, it was mine. Every corner, every chair, every recipe. Mine. And that meant I got to decide who sat where. The revenge plan came together almost too perfectly. My parents had no idea I'd bought the restaurant. Daniel, bitter and licking his wounds, refused to speak to me, which made it even easier to stay hidden. For weeks, I quietly renovated. New lighting, polished wood, a menu update that kept the heart of the place alive while elevating it just enough to draw attention. Soon, we were packed every night. Then, one evening, I got the call. My mother's voice chirped on the phone. "We're going out to dinner as a family. Your father's treating. It's been a while. We'll meet at that old restaurant near Main Street. You should come too, Gigi." I almost laughed out loud. The irony was too rich, but I bit my tongue and said, "Shh, I'll be there." That night, I arrived early, not through the front door, but through the back, slipping into my office where Maya was waiting. She grinned when she saw me, whispered, "Ready?" I nodded, my pulse hammering. The dining room was buzzing with guests when my family walked in, my parents, smug and perfectly dressed. Daniel, scowling but tagging along anyway. They were seated at the very same table, the one where the mocking toast had been born. I watched from the kitchen as they ordered, laughing, clinking glasses, making little digs at each other the way they always did. They had no idea. When dessert was served, I stepped out. Not in an apron, not carrying plate. In a tailored black dress, head high, every eye turning as I walked straight toward their table. My mom blinked. "Gigi, what are you doing here?" I smiled. "Oh, I work here now." In a way. Daniel narrowed his eye. "Don't tell me you're waiting tables." I cut him off by placing a set of keys on the table with a sharp clink. "Actually, I own the place." The silence that fell was delicious. My father choked on his wine. My mother's jaw went slack. Daniel's face flushed red. I leaned closer, lowering my voice so only they could hear. "Remember that toast you made? The one where you laughed and said I'd never succeed?" Their faces stiffened. I straightened, gestured toward their plates, and let my words slice the air. "Enjoy the free meal. On your boss." The shock on their faces was worth every sleepless night, every tear, every ounce of doubt I'd swallowed. Gasps rippled through nearby tables as whispers spread, people realizing what was happening. Daniel shoved his chair back, sputtering, "This is a joke. She can't." Maya appeared at my side, cool and calm. "She can. Papers are signed, the deed's in her name." My parents looked at me, and for the first time in my life, they weren't looking down at me. They were looking up. I didn't wait for them to recover. I turned, raised my glass high, and made my own toast, loud enough for the entire restaurant to hear. To everyone who's ever been laughed at, underestimated, told they'd never make it, may your revenge be served hot, delicious, and undeniable. The room erupted in cheer. Strangers clapped. Some even stood. My family sat frozen, their meal turning cold in front of them, their pride shattered. And me? I finally felt full, not just from success, not just from revenge, but from freedom. Thank you for listening.